weekly check-in on Brian today. So let's start with the scale you talk about. You know, the zero being low, the 100 being high, 50 is right in the middle. Where how are you at today?
I'm like a solid 50, like just right smack dab in the middle. It's funny. I've been doing the 100 burpees a day challenge for like mental health purposes. And in the beginning, I'd get questions like, what has that done to your physique? And, like I was generally pretty in shape before that. So not a whole lot. I am a little stronger, but for the most part, it's been purely a mental exercise. And I was in my lowest, darkest point, one of them 50 days ago, 51 days ago. And now on my last video, I said, like, I've done 5,000 and I started at a real dark point and now I am successfully mediocre. So if you work really hard and do a bunch of burpees, then one day that you too can be mediocre. So right now I'd say my mental health is pretty mediocre.
Hey, welcome in, Barrett H. Thanks for joining us.
Hey,
So yeah, and follow up. How are your shoulders feeling? I was asking about those last time. Are they holding up okay?
there's like I said, they every time I do my burpees, they spasm. But besides that, they're holding on. Oh, hey, Valhalla Verse, just here to send some good energy your way. Bipolar is pain, but bipolar is a pain, but you've been doing great, man. Oh, I really appreciate that. Yeah, try my best. Like I said, we're striving to be great. Right now, mediocre, but we're striving our best to be great.
And I was curious, kind of about how this burpees would affect you and how it would kind of play out and on your mood and all that. And it sounds like it has been effective.
Yeah, I didn't think it would work. And my whole deal was like, if I could do the concept was I hate this. Like I hate doing them. Burpees are objectively terrible.
Hmm.
But if I can do them, then I can literally do anything else. Like I can slay dragons, if you will. And the last thing you want to do when you're depressed is slay dragons. And you had brought up an interesting point about like a topic of wanting to touch into about like working while on this bipolar spectrum.
Hmm.
Is there any way you wanted to like phrase that?
Yeah, because I would imagine like if you're riding high 60s, 70s, 80s, and you're working 80 hours a week, that would be easy. But I can imagine if you're trying to do that when you're at like a 20. I mean, how do you manage that when you're kind of going through these ups and downs, trying to maintain like a work
Um,
life?
so real quick, I'll get to Valhalla. They said, do I follow a certain nutrition plan? They tried low carb. Uh, I stay away from sugar, and I don't eat sugar, and I don't uh, like I haven't had a soda in 15 years. I don't drink caffeine. I don't have coffee. I don't have alcohol or any substances. So that sort of helps me stay level and calm. And I generally try to be as healthy as possible, but staying away from the sugars and the alcohols are the big one for me.
And I don't remember if we talked about this or not, but they the original ketogenic diet, which is super effective, was originally developed for people with seizures because it was where your brain stops using carbs for energy and uses ketones for energy if you starve your body of carbs and then just like use fat for energy. And they found it worked on people with seizures and they would stop having them going to a super low carb diet. So I wonder if that's helping Valhalla verse here, kind of that same idea of having a better effect on your brain chemistry, giving it a different energy source.
Yeah, well, it's funny because, like, when I got diagnosed with bipolar, and this is why I was able to kind of white knuckle it as long as I had before I knew. I was 27 at the time, and I never drank or done drugs. I stayed outside a lot. Was physically active. I didn't eat sugar or and I did all the things that they say you should be doing except being on medication therapy.
Mm.
So and I still would have these wild swings, but I was able to kind of like white knuckle it and hold on as tight as I could during the swings because of my other discipline. Um,
Yeah, interesting. So it sounds like your whole brain is just gasoline, and you just can't give it any fire at all.
no, otherwise the nuclear bomb goes off.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
but yeah, going back to your point about like working, yeah, during the highs, like you work 80, 90. I'm working 80 hours right now and I'm mediocre about it. I'm middle. I'm 40 hours at Taco Bell, and 80 hours teaching. Uh, and I'm tired all the time, which kind of sucks, but I'm able to get through it. But when you're depressed, it's easier now for me to do 80 hours a week, mediocre, than to do 10 hours a week if I'm depressed.
Mm. Wow. Really.
Yeah, just like eating, like we talked about this in past episodes, like eating in general. Like if I had, I'd wake up at like 10 and I'd stay in bed looking on my phone until 12, and then I eat my first meal at 7 p.m. I wouldn't feel hungry, but I'd get lightheaded as I stood up because I'm just.
Yeah, that's interesting too because I know I've read a lot of stuff about fasting, and that's supposed to be good for you too. So I wonder if you've inadvertently like helped yourself out a little bit by kind of doing this intermittent fasting like throughout without even realizing it.
Uh, I tell myself I'm doing intermittent fasting, when realistically I'm just being like lazy. Lazy is a bad word. Like I'm not, like it's too hard, but at the same time, like when I'm in that mental state, it is too hard. And like the medication is sometimes like I get bloated easier on the medication, so like I can't eat as much as I did pre-medication.
Interesting. Okay. And then how's that Taco Bell diet going? I know you get free stuff there, right? Are you still keeping that going?
Actually, this is a this is a good story. So Taco Bell, I go to a Jersey Mike's because my parents gave me a gift card, sandwich place, and I'm like ready to spend it. I'm wearing my Taco Bell gear, and there's like this 19-year-old, and he's like, "Hey, you work at Taco Bell?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "You gonna hook it up?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I gave him my number, and now whenever he comes to Taco Bell, I give him free tacos, and whenever I go to Jersey Mike's, he gives me free subs, and I feel like that's a way better trade for me.
That's awesome.
And then to answer Valhalla verse, so I've been able to avoid weight gain on medication. Yeah, I've always had like a pretty fast metabolism, so that helps. But also the fact that I don't like I don't eat the sugars and stuff like that, and I do the burpees. Like my whole deal is if I'm the medication has made it to where I gain more weight, but like I'm more likely to lose weight than I am to gain it. So, like, I'll work out really hard to gain all my muscle, and then I'll go through a depressive episode, and then I'll lose like all of it, and I'll just be like rail thin, and I won't be healthy, but I'll lose like 12 to 15 pounds of muscle, everything I worked for months.
That is interesting. I think that's common with anybody. Like, if they are really feeling depressed and unmotivated, they fall into whatever old or bad habits, and the lack of discipline. And so, for some people, it's eating too much, but some people, it's not eating enough. And it's interesting how people fall into what they don't want to do when they're depressed.
Well, and I this is kind of unrelated, but I it's that, but I look at like old people, right? I'm talking about like 95, close to death, right? Everyone is either like really big or really small.
Hmm.
You either go out exploding or you go out disintegrating.
And I would say a lot of small. There's a lot of small
Yeah.
old people.
Well, if you make it that long, you know, like my grandma was like 5'7", 80 pounds, by the time she passed away. And so I think when it is my time to go, I'm gonna be like 48 pounds, you know, like done. But that a little bit, so I'm able to kind of keep a little bit of weight on because of that. Because they do bipolar medication does make you gain weight.
That was my question. Do you know what the function is on that one? It increase your appetite, or
I don't really know. It's weird. I eat faster now. Like I'm like the sensors in my brain when there's food. It's like I used to have 30 minutes per meal. Now it's like 7. I'm like scarfing that thing down fast, and I get full the same, but I just scarf it down faster.
and then um, how I imagine fairly healthy eating when you're going to be walking in across Africa because of I imagine they'd probably just eat healthier, or is that a wrong assumption?
That's the assumption. So at least I don't know how, and I don't want to speak for the whole continent of Africa because I've only been to a few of the countries that I'm going through. But like for example, when I was in Tanzania, it was like a lot of carbs, a lot of fried, a lot of oils, like cheap oils that So that's going to be one of the hard things. Is just like I just remember having an upset stomach, and part of that was the fact that I had a parasite, and I got like contaminated water, and I had all this other stuff too. But just I was just weak, and there's lack of protein in their diet, and so that'll be one of the obstacles that people don't really think about on the walk. They'll think about. I hear some of the craziest things. People be like, "Aren't you worried you're going to be eaten by lions?" Like, no, not at all. Am I worried that I'm going to be thirsty and that I'm going to be damaged by the sun? Yes, very much so.
I see. Yeah.
Oh,
So Vahalaverse says, can you explain your goals with walking the country of Africa?
okay, so it's something I've always wanted to do to walk the continent of not always, but like the last 4 or 5 years, I've been planning this trip, and the goal was to do something physically exhilarating, culturally stimulating, and challenging, but also like be able to make an impact in people's lives. So I eh, how can I do that just walking? You really can't. But if you take on a side project, and the project I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be talking about mental health disorders along the walk. So I'll be doing a podcast like we're doing right now with me and Cam, where I'll be talking to people about. So I'm starting off in South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa, and I'm meeting with a radio station, Cape Talk 567 AM, and I'm gonna say I'm doing this walk to bring awareness to places in the world that aren't talked about as much, mental health spectrums. So if you're depressed, if you're bipolar, if you're paranoid schizophrenic, reach out to me and I'll walk through your area. We'll have a conversation. So like the first couple days will be more populated, so I'll be able to go to, like, I'm going to this town today. It's about 8 hours away by foot. Is there anyone there that's bipolar? Is there anyone there that's depressed? Is there anyone there that's curious or interested that wants to host me for a night? We'll have a conversation for 5 to 10 minutes, posted on this website, and I'll hear people's stories. And we had a guy named Shepherd on a couple weeks ago that's from Tanzania, and he had talked about his depression living here in COVID and how people actually talk about it. Because he said in Tanzania, we don't have depression. It's not a thing. We're tougher than that. Like there's a mentality. And so I
Mhm.
want to change that stigma a little bit. And I will tease this a little bit. I have been working with the International Bipolar Foundation on a project that we'll be talking about a lot next week when I have more details. But it's both mostly to raise awareness and give people a platform to speak.
Cool. And then before we wrap this up, my kind of last question is: are you going to do some sort of specific training to build yourself up to be able to walk 8 hours a day without pain, discomfort, and all that?
I mean, I've been doing the burpees just to stay fit, but when I was this last summer, I was in Italy and I was really like seeing could I walk 8 hours a day, and I was walking six, and I was relatively fine. So I think I could work my way up to eight. I'm not going to have a lot of time. Um, I'm not going to have a lot of time to work 80 hours a week and walk 8 hours a day. And my last day of work is June 14th, and my flight is June 19th. So I have like 5 days. So no, I'll have to basically do it on the fly. And
Okay,
then,
it sounds like it won't be too hard to work up to it. Just maybe a few days of getting out there will help.
yeah, just I'll get out there and I'll walk, and I'll maybe 2 3 weeks, and then the body will adjust, and 6 hours a day in the beginning, and then 8 hours a day. Uh, and then Val asked if I deal with paranoia. Pre-medication all the time. I would have I would have like paranoid outbreaks, where I'm like, this person said that, but not as much post-medication.
Interesting. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to let you go. And thanks for hanging out with us, everybody who joined us today. Hopefully, we can keep building this up and get more questions and more engagement and keep it interesting.
Yeah, tell your friends. Feel free to join. We're every Wednesday at this time, 5 p.m. Pacific. So if you feel like joining, and if you have any questions, feel free to hit them up in the comments below, and we'll try to get to each and every one.
All right, cool. All right, we'll see. We'll see everyone next week.
All right, take
All
care,
right,
everybody.
bye.